Well, thank you, Natalie, for arranging all of this for us, and welcome. So pleased to be able to welcome you to this is our very first Dahdaleh Global Health Trainee Symposium. So thank you all for participating, and thanks to anyone who has joined us online as well. I'm Tara Penny. I'm a professor at the School of Global Health, and I'm the interim associate director at the Dahdaleh Institute for Global Health Research as well. And I'm just so excited to have you all in the room and to have folks online to contribute to getting to know you guys a little bit better, our graduate students, our global health interns, and also representing that broader cohort of people doing early career research and all the work that was desperately needed across the globe. So thank you so much for coming. I'm also just to get us started, before I jump into the logistics and what the event will look like, I just wanted to do our land acknowledgement, which we were just talking about where we commute from and where we live. And of course, this is a hybrid event. So we have folks joining us online. Everyone will be in a different territory. So please just give some time to give some thanks and some acknowledgement to whatever territory you find yourself on. Today, of course, we're at York University campus, which is in Toronto. It's situated on the traditional territories known as Tekaronto. So we want to acknowledge its current treaty holders, the Mississauga and the Credit First Nations. And also York is situated on the traditional territories of many Indigenous nations as well, including the Anishinaabe Nation, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, the Huron-Wendat, and the Métis as well. So we want to acknowledge that. And we want to acknowledge the territory, we want to acknowledge that the territory is subject to the Dish with One Spoon Wampum Belt Covenant, an agreement to peaceably share and care for the Great Lakes region. And then just to share kind of a personal note, of course, we have land acknowledgements, but we might have personal ways to connect or reconnect with the land, to give thanks and gratitude to the environment and the world that sustains us. So please, if you have a moment or an ability to do that after the event or after we eat, please take the time to do that in a way that's sort of meaningful and important to you personally. Great. I sort of use this as a reminder, touchstone, to do those sorts of things. Okay. So with the land acknowledgement, we can switch back to the order of the day. So for the event, we of course have our interns with us. We have our graduate students with us. So thank you so much for coming. We want to take this opportunity to showcase the research that you're doing, get to know it better, give you an opportunity to have a dialogue and discussion amongst yourselves and the folks that are able to join us online. We want an opportunity as well to maybe start a conversation because we only have 2 hours today, but please do reach out to folks after the event if there's anybody doing work that's interested. So the idea is not just to sort of partly to showcase your work for sure, to thank the broader group of global health interns and graduate students who are working diligently on their research. Of course, we need this quite desperately in current times. People who are committed to invest their time and their energy, moments away from family, moments away from socializing, all of those things that you sort of give up to pursue research and graduate studies and further training. So thank you for all of your hard work, and thanks to the larger group that you represent as well in doing that. So the other quick thing maybe for us to cover would be the plan is for us to have about a 2-hour event. So our plan is to go to about 1 o'clock. We also, each of you, I think, have about 5 minutes to share an overview of your work and your research and your progress to date and help us get to know you and your work a little bit better. And then we will do 3 presentations. We'll have a 10-minute break. We'll do 3 presentations, and then we'll adjourn. And after the little groups of 3, there'll be an opportunity for a little Q&A. as well. So the folks that are joining us online or anyone in the room, if you've got questions, if it's okay, we'll just hear 3 presentations and have an opportunity to have a bit of a plenary discussion afterward. Does that work for everyone okay? Okay, excellent. And then I'm just thinking, part of my role as well as moderator will just be to help keep us a little bit to time as much as possible. So if I'll apologize in advance for maybe nudging us or pushing. I really dislike tamping down discussion, but as I mentioned, please feel free to hang around afterwards, to contact people after the fact. We hope this is just sort of the beginning of a discussion and dialogue for you and for everyone that's attending. The event will be recorded. The recording will be available after the event as well. If the folks that are joining online don't mind just staying muted until the sort of question and answer period, that would be wonderful. Just take note of your questions and I'll make sure we have an opportunity to see if anybody's got anything to add. Did I miss anything? Does anybody have any questions? At all? Right. And I'll do a little mini intro for everyone as well before we join them. Natalie, are we okay to start?
Absolutely.
Excellent. Okay, so our first presenter will be Rupsha Mutsuddi. So Rupsha is a PhD student at the School of Global Health, and she's also a Dahdaleh Global Health graduate scholar. Her work focuses on human-centered design to improve the quality of life of people living with dementia in global communities, an interdisciplinary approach, and with an empathetic mindset. She develops meaningful solutions and strives to shape a better future through design, education, research, and practice. So thank you so much for joining us, Rupsha, and we look forward to hearing more about your work.
Thank you. So I just wanted to start off by talking a little bit about my project. So I'm using sort of participatory design methods to address loneliness and social isolation for people living with dementia, both in Canada and in other countries. Next slide, please.
You've got the keyboard there.
Oh,
that should work.
So earlier this summer, the WHO released a flagship report on social connection, where they talked really about the importance of social health, the importance of connecting with others, and really defined these terms of loneliness and social isolation within the report. So for them, loneliness is a negative emotional state that occurs when one's current state of social interaction does not align with their desired state. And they say this is subjective, whereas social isolation is more of an objective measure that describes a lack of relationships or social interactions. The important distinction I want to make is that you can be socially isolated without being lonely, and you can be lonely without being socially isolated, because they are different measures. Loneliness and social isolation also impacts older adults and older adults living with dementia particularly. 25% of older adults are considered lonely, according to this report, and people living with disabilities, which the WHO also defines dementia as a disability. And then there are studies done within particularly Alzheimer's societies in Europe. One report from the Alzheimer's Society of the UK also states that people living with dementia who live alone are more likely to be lonely than people living with dementia who live with their families or loved ones, etc. So to broaden this concept of social health, I've been using this model, and I also want to just pose a caveat that this project is in early stages and frameworks and things like that might change. But this model is really helpful because it views social health as an interplay of individual factors and an individual's social environment. So the individual's capacity to participate in social activities, for example, plays a role. And then the structure and the function and appraisal of their social environment. So again, the disconnect between someone's desired state of social interaction versus their current state plays a role in their social health. And social health, broadly to define it, is your relationships, your capacity to interact with people. And it's one of the doctrines, again, that the WHO focuses on. So as I mentioned, as Tara mentioned, I'm a designer. So I'm particularly looking at technologies for mitigating loneliness for people living with dementia. And through my literature review thus far, I've identified 3 gaps. And those gaps are largely that the interventions focus on virtual companions or robot pets, and they're deployed in HIC settings, so high income settings in Europe and North America. I'll tell you a little funny story about Paro, which is the robot seal that this older adult is holding. Paro was developed, I believe, in Europe, and they tried to deploy this in other places, but it was rejected by a lot of different areas. The reason being is some older adults found it infantilizing, so they thought it was too childlike. Other issues were like some people were confused why this pet wasn't receptive to receiving food or going for walks like a regular pet might be. So there was this idea of technology psychosis where they thought this robot pet might be real. So there are some ethical issues surrounding the use of these robot pets. And my work sort of focuses instead on facilitating social interactions between people rather than replacing them with technology. The other gap is like the focus on mitigating cognitive functional loss, because a lot of these technologies are developed to support activities of daily living. These are functional measures that a lot of healthcare practitioners use to assess states of dementia or the progress of dementia. So it's like things like dressing yourself, are you able to feed yourself, are you able to go through ambulatory responses? But there are so many other activities that people living with dementia value, like leisure activities, like being able to sit at a dinner table and enjoy meals with their family, for instance, that aren't as supported by technology. And then the third gap is like technologies are often seen as Band-Aid solutions, and they don't have accompanying services to support them. So for example, a service might be like the Meals on Wheels app. If you're familiar with that service, it brings meals to older adults that aren't able to leave their homes at times. And that is accompanied by an app. So that service and app work together to bring a particular experience for older adults. Stuck again. Like I said in the beginning, I'm interested in using participatory design approaches. So over the summer, I attended a summer school at the Association of Applied Computer Machinery in Europe, in Sweden. And as part of that training, I got to participate in a lot of inclusive design and co-design activities. So this was one of them. And this is where you have people from different disciplines sitting around and applying their knowledge to a particular solution. So I was put in a group with a speech language pathologist and a technology designer who is very specialized in haptics. I have zero idea how haptics work, but I was kind of talking about the experience of using the product, whereas the other people sort of filled in the gaps. And that's essentially what co-design is. The difference between participatory and co-design is the notion of it being researcher-led, as you can see. And really, we're trying to decide where in the project right now we would be using participatory design approaches and where we would be using co-design approaches. And whether or not where in the creation process this would be applied. So my preliminary research question is, how can we design technologies that mitigate loneliness and social isolation in partnership with people living with dementia in communities globally? I'm also interested in involving other people in the care circle, like caregivers, healthcare practitioners, technology developers. And currently, I'm just exploring the current research landscape through my comprehensive exam outputs. So I'm working on a scoping review, an overview of the frameworks that will eventually become chapter 1 of my dissertation, and then also a research proposal. And to craft this research proposal, I'm actually working on some participatory design sessions with people living with dementia and their caregivers. So I've been working on this all summer and just planning these participatory design sessions. The aim of the session is to explore the intersection of everyday activities, technologies, and social interactions for people living with dementia and their caregivers. So working in pairs, people living with dementia and their caregivers will develop this. This is a co-design tool that I made. It focuses on the center, like the social network. So what people are involved in the activities. If we go further out in ring 2, we'll focus on activities of interest for the people in the social circle. Number 3 and 4 describe the positive and negative social experiences, and the images curated are based on the circumplex model of affect. So they're rated on that scale on different emotional ranges. We are adding a third ring where it will describe technologies, but during the discussion session after this canvas was done, we did talk quite a bit about technology as well. And then part 2 of this participatory design session is a technology scavenger hunt. So it will feature a series of technologies, tools, games that'll be set up trade show style for people living with dementia and their caregivers to try out. And they'll give their insights on how these technologies can improve their experience of social interactions. Ria and Sheryl have also developed a game for this session, so I'll let them talk about that. But if you or someone else you know might be interested in participating in the participatory design session, please feel free to contact me. So you could be a caregiver, person living with dementia. If you have healthcare experience working with people with dementia, we welcome you. It should say one day, but it's on September 22nd, 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. here on York University. And if you can also participate online if you're interested. And then lastly, I'll just thank everyone sort of involved with the project, all our funding partners, particularly Connected Minds, the Dahdaleh Institute for Global Health Research, SHARC and NSERC, all our community partners who've been helping us with recruitment this summer, but also giving their insights on the research process, which has been really helpful. And just wanted to thank everyone at the SATS Lab and all our research assistants that have been helping me this summer. Yeah, that's all I got.
Thank you. Thank you so much. That was a whistle-stop tour, so thank you for as well. I know it's hard to put PhD work and research work into that time, so thank you so much again. And if everybody's okay, are you sure? We'll just move to the next presentation and then do our plenary discussion. Excellent. Okay, so our next presenter, Mahnoosh as well, who is joining us. She's an undergraduate intern. They're part of the Wellness Impact Lab, a psychology student, is that right? At York. Their academic interests focus on mental health, eco-psychology, child development, aspiring to become a holistic eco-psychologist, which sounds fascinating. They're passionate about integrating nature-based, trauma-informed, and culturally responsive approaches into mental health care. So a much needed area of research. Thank you so much. Please get started when you're ready.
Thank you. So imagine waking up one morning and realizing the place that you call home. So for instance, the rivers, the trees, the seasons around you no longer feel the same. And that ache that you feel is called solastalgia. And it's just one way that climate change is reshaping our mental health. And today I'll be sharing the project presentation that I'm working with my co-authors, which is Sophia Bryan Carbonell, Christy Castanian, Dr. Harvey Skinner, and Susan Harris. And this presentation is called Nature Heals, Nature's Role in Healing Nature-Based Interventions for Climate-Related Emotional Distress. So thank you so much for the introduction. I think you did an amazing job for the introduction. So I think I'll be moving to the third part. So I'm a co-author on the scoping review for climate-related emotional distress. And of course, I support climate cafes with a wellness impact lab. I engage in outreach, and most importantly, I carried forward the belief of healing people with the environment around us. And I think that healing the planet and healing our minds are very interconnected. We usually hear about climate change in the context of wildfires, floods, and of course, rising temperatures and so on, but it's also a mental health crisis. There are different terms that we explore in the scoping review, and three of which are eco-anxiety, climate grief, and nostalgia. So you may think that these terms are similar, but they're quite different. So eco-anxiety is the fear and worry about climate change. And of course, climate grief is the mourning of environmental losses. And nostalgia, on the other hand, is the distress of watching your home environment change, as discussed in the first slide. And these emotions are not only valid, but they're real. They are also this problem that we have with climate change. And the problem here is traditional therapies rarely address the ecological roots of these feelings. And climate change really impacts our mental health in the context of feeling as the different distresses that we feel. And that's why me and my co-authors, have turned to nature itself as a source of healing. As we're experiencing climate change in this day and age, I think the best way to deal with the mental health impacts that we have from climate change is to turn to nature. Our research, our scoping review research, is named Nature-Based Interventions for Climate-Related Emotional Distress, a scoping review. We asked this important question of how can nature-based interventions support people experiencing climate-related emotional distress? And our framework is simple. It's a JBI framework that we have we have population, we have concept, and context. So population, the people that we're looking to is people who are experiencing climate-related emotional distress, whether it's eco-anxiety, climate grief, or nostalgia. And the concept is that interventions where nature is essential to therapy. So one example could be like green exercise, where people go, for instance, hiking in nature, or they try to do art-based activities in nature that is in the context of nature. And of course, for the context, it's across all cultural and geographic settings. So we're not limiting ourselves to one geographic or cultural setting. We're looking at everywhere. And we have researched both academic and grade literature. And since there's just a few academic literature that we have found so far, so we looked to grade literature to try to find an immense amount of research that we can find. And so far, our preliminary findings have found that about half of the studies focus on NBIs for general mental health. So this could be people who are dealing with depression, anxiety, or stress, or potentially other kinds of mental health problems. And another set focus on climate-related distress, but they focus on traditional psychological approaches, for instance, CBT, and not nature-based ones. And the gap that we have found through our preliminary findings is that despite the rise of eco-anxiety, climate grief, and nostalgia, or any kind of climate-related emotional distress, there has never been a scoping review that maps how these nature-based interventions address the different types of climate-related emotional distress. And we have found that it's really important for people to really recognize this problem And it means for researchers and practitioners, and of course, policymakers, that they don't have yet clear evidence or guide to move forward with this problem. So that is why we have started the scoping review to really address these problems throughout our scoping review. And we are going to, of course, focus on the action-based. So why does this matter to us? I think that in terms of what we think is that filling this gap means that creating space for therapies that do more than manage symptoms, that really focus and reconnect us to our natural world, to nature. And it really heals us in that part if we connect to nature when we're experiencing climate-related emotional distress. And for us, this project has been more than academic. We've learned that so far we have learned technical skills in systematic searching and synthesis, but we've also seen how research can bridge this gap between, evidence and action, and between communities and policymakers, between us and the natural world. And our next steps are, of course, full text screening, data extraction, synthesis and mapping, and manuscript drafting, and of course, publication and sharing this knowledge with researchers and policymakers. So climate change challenges both our ecosystems and, of course, our hearts. But nature itself holds the power to comfort us. So why not return to nature when we're experiencing immense climate-related emotional distress? And it can help us, and it can also restore the uncertainty that we feel. And I want to thank my fellow co-authors, again, Sophia Bryan Carbonell, Christy Costanian, Dr. Harvey Skinner, and Susan Harris, and of course, the Wellness Impact Lab and Dahdaleh Institute. They have been incredible in supporting us with this project. So yeah, thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Mahnoosh. Thank you. That was really excellent presentation and overview again. A lot to cover, and you did an excellent job kind of giving us a good flavor for it. So I look forward to the questions as well, because I think that'll be a great discussion. Wonderful. So we'll cruise along to our next presenters. So we have Sheryl, Peris, and Ria Saraiya, presenting. They are both undergraduate research at York students, so part of the RAY program at York, working as global health interns. They're supervised by Jalilzadeh at the Social and Technological Systems Lab. Sheryl is a third-year honors global health candidate. Ria is entering her fourth year in the Bachelor of Design honors program. It's really exciting. Both their collaborative research focuses on the role of human-centered design, accessibility, and enhancing communication from a global health and humanitarian perspective, and they will be co-presenting today. Is that right? Great. Okay, so please take it away whenever you're ready.
Thank you so much for the warm introduction, Dr. Penny. So my name is Sheryl, and this is Ria. And this summer, both of us worked on a project at the Social and Technological Systems Lab under the supervision of Dr. Sai to explore the design of interventions to improve communication closeness between people with dementia and their care network, as well as developing a number of iterations based on our analysis of existing gaps. So why is this an important area of research in the context of global health? People with dementia experience a decline in a variety of cognitive functions, including language, mobility, thinking, judgment, and memory. And communication challenges are very common, particularly with slower verbal communication and noticeable pauses, and these become exacerbated over time as dementia progresses. As a result, individuals experience difficulties in communicating their everyday preferences and their needs in a cohesive way to their caregivers and family members. And this breakdown in communication can cause individuals to feel dismissed or feel pressured to provide correct responses. And so this lessens the quality of interactions that they have with others, and over time can lead to isolation from others. Despite the challenges that come with dementia, these individuals do continue to express cognitive and emotional responses. So preserving their personhood, which is defined as a relational sense of identity that is shaped and reinforced through interactions with others, that is incredibly important for their quality of life. So in order to analyze the gaps in current communication interventions, we first needed to define what communication was. And so after analyzing a number of definitions, frameworks, and theories, we came up with this definition that aligns with the communication empowerment framework. So communication as a dynamic and reciprocal process rooted in mutual understanding that comprises all forms of expression and enables individuals to convey meaning, assert agency, and engage with others. So once we had established this definition, we conducted a literature review to explore existing interventions to improve communication closeness with people with dementia. So one of the notable ones that we looked at was All About Us. And we can see in figure 2, this is a mindful storytelling board game that allows players to reminisce about the past, discuss the present, and explore future aspirations as well. Figure 3 looks at a personal robot companion called Peris, and this tool essentially provides instructions and assists individual in performing everyday activities. And in figure 4, we can see the talking mat, which is an assistive and augmentative communication tool, which we define as tools that either accompany or substitute verbal communication typically. And so the talking mat, which we see in this picture, supports communication through the use of visual cards. So while these interventions can be helpful for engagement or for conveying information, we did find a number of gaps in how they address communication closeness, which we connected using the mind map on the left-hand side. And so I'll elaborate a little more on that. So many of these interventions, particularly the AACs, tend to be prompt-based. And so the conversations that happen when these conversations are happening are often led by caregivers. And so this can take away from the agency of people with dementia to lead the conversation. Another related gap that we found was an implicit power dynamic in which interactions tend to be involving passive involvement from people with dementia rather than an active leading or engaging in the activity. And they result usually in caregivers just directing people with dementia on how to do these activities. We also found that the majority of interventions for communication and dementia care have adopted a person-centered approach. And while this has emphasized the independence and autonomy involved in performing everyday activities and rightfully highlighting that individuals with dementia are capable of performing these activities with minimal assistance, focus can be taken away from the necessary social components of everyday life, including activities that are typically done in a collaborative manner. So in these cases, we can often observe static interactions that are directed by caregivers and serve the purpose of simply transmitting information from one person to another. And so going back to our definition of communication, which involves a reciprocal dynamic engagement rooted in mutual understanding, interactions facilitated by some of these strategies may overlook the engagement and connection required for effective communication. Now I'm going to be handing it over to Ria, who's going to talk a little bit more about our intervention.
So based on the literature review findings that Sheryl shared with us, I will take you through the intervention we are developing, explain what it is, how it works, and what we're hoping to accomplish with it. So from the literature review, we saw that while there are tools that help in directing or substituting verbal communication, very few emphasize on the relational interaction between people with dementia and their caregivers. Many of the tools that exist are assistive technologies like AAC devices or purely therapeutic interventions that focus on a more hierarchical dynamics where caregiver leads and person with dementia follows. This risks sidelining agency and reciprocity in the relationship. Our intervention, which is a board game, takes these insights into account and encourages choice making, shared discovery, as well as engagement. So the board game provides a structured yet playful environment which supports multiple modes of interaction. Players can handle pieces, move through space, point at objects. People with dementia can engage in a way that feels meaningful and enjoyable to them. The game also supports storytelling and narrative making. So different spaces in the game helps people with dementia relate to their own personal experiences, memories, preferences. So how this game works, in its current state, it exists in a bunch of tiles, and these tiles relate to spaces in the home, like your kitchen, living room, bedroom, etc. A path traverses these tiles, and the path consists of activities related to those spaces, like, for example, grocery shopping or kitchen or cooking in the kitchen. So the players roll a dice and take their turn, and if they end up on an activity they like, then they receive a card for it. The game also allows for other playful interactions like swapping or stealing this card, or reversing play, or skipping a turn. The board game attempts to keep cognitive load low while still trying to make it dynamic and engaging. So the game allows for moments of choice making. The players or people with dementia can pick a card that they like, steal a card that they don't want, or reject a card that they don't like. The very action of selecting, rejecting, or stealing puts back agency and expression into the hands of people with dementia. They are the ones who kind of steer the interaction rather than being passively guided through a routine. Further, how the game continues is that based on all the activities you get, you rank your top 3 activities. And from there, you go on to creating a visual mood board for your top ranked activity. The creation of something that's a tangible expression of your preferences helps extend communication outside of the board game. So, how our intervention differs from a typical board game is that it is not only a product, but it is also rooted in research through design. It also functions as something that helps asking questions and generating insights, and it will create knowledge and also through playing and making. So since we deal with spaces, there's a lot of spatial mapping that takes place, and spatial mapping of these familiar environments asserts anchors which people with dementia can relate to memories, to stories. It causes emotional resonance. In contrast to communication tools, which simply aid in transmitting information, the game encourages choice making, shared discovery, mutual understanding, expression. And while this game is still in its work in progress, like it's in development, currently we are trying to develop it into a more imaginative and fantastical setting, moving it away from the house setting that we have going on right now, so that we can see more abstract kinds of story and playmaking that can occur. We're also trying to add in more tactile elements to the game to make it more accessible and stimulating. All of these moves are to kind of support our final goal, which is to facilitate communication that is dynamic and reciprocal between people with dementia and their caregivers, and also to empower people with dementia kind of communicate for themselves in a way that is low pressure, in a setting where they won't feel sidelined or spoken for, and it can also lead to moments of closeness. Thank you.
So through this project, Ria and I acquired a lot of knowledge and experience. So we're going to go over a couple of them. We gained a lot of hands-on experience in research through design, seeing how iterative creation informs understanding, as well as some of the design research that's involved. And we also gained experience in supporting an exploratory project from initial research to design conceptualization, as well as how to conduct a literature review.
And we are really grateful for Dr. Sheryl Desai, who sat with us through multiple sessions of feedback and iteration and guiding us throughout the whole process. And we're also super thankful to all the members of the SATS Lab who've also tested the game by playing it with us and giving us a lot of feedback, and also kind of giving us a sneak peek into the projects that they're working on and their processes. So this experience has been a lot more valuable because of all the feedback and support and understanding from all of these people. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much, Sheryl and Rita. That was really brilliant. I just wanted to open it up. We've got a good 10, 12 minutes or so to have a bit of an open discussion. If there are any questions for any of our presenters, comments, thoughts, in the room, of course, online, all very welcome. If you're in the room, feel free to speak loudly so folks online can hear you. That's the only requirement. Anything? Yeah.
I have a question for you. Where did this idea originate from? Because it's very, very interesting.
Yeah, so I did a Master of Design at work alongside Dr. Sheryl Desai, who is my PhD supervisor currently. And as part of that work, I did a contextual inquiry study. So I worked with people living with dementia and their caregivers. And as you know, when you do research, you don't just answer your research question, you get 100 other research directions. So one of the research directions that we were looking at is similar to Sheryl and Rhea, how we can improve the quality of life for people with dementia. And that's not just, one section of it, that's a holistic understanding and, enriching their social world along with quality of life. And it's interesting, the scoping review that I'm currently working on, often social interaction and loneliness, it's like a proxy measure of quality of life. So it's not, people are just looking at that. They're looking at improving quality of life, which is a huge concept. So taking a little piece of that and saying, can we really focus in on this aspect and improve it?
Any questions?
We've got one online from Arden.
Okay, great. Maybe
Okay.
should we read that out? Or unmute in person. Perfect. On here. Harvey, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'm really fascinated about all three presentations, and as you can see, having gray in my beard, aging. The two dealing on the different games. I think that's really very creative work, and I'd like to even do the games myself. So I'm wondering, do you, in your studies, do you use a quotes control group of older adults who are not experiencing dementia? And what are their reactions to this? Because I think these type of games could be useful in a preventive way of, increasing your cognitive functioning. So I'm just wondering, is that part of the research design to use a reference group of older but cognitively, I guess, sound individuals, and what impact does a game have with them?
You want me to answer?
Great question. I think Rhea and Sheryl, that's
So that's a great question. So as of now, we're only developing the game based on all of the literature we've read, and it's still very much a work in progress. So we haven't really had the chance of testing it out against a control group in any way, but we are going to kind of test the game out with people with dementia and their caregivers later on in September. So maybe that gives us a clearer idea of where this game goes, and maybe down the line we also get to test it out with a control group, as you said.
Would I be able to add on to that?
Yeah, I was just going to say that I think you have your first participant. Harvey agreed to participate. Rupsha, please.
So while that's not an intentional part of the research design quite yet, a lot of the older adults also serve as caregivers for people with dementia. So a large majority of the participants we recruited thus far are older adults. So they will be trying out the board game alongside people with dementia. So yes, we will have a little bit of a comparison, but not officially a part of the research design.
Thanks. Great.
And to talk about example,
Yeah.
context in the chat.
So caregivers are usually older adults. The objective is to evaluate design for stakeholders. Yeah. So that's from Sheryl. Thank you, Sheryl. Any other? Yeah, Kadir, please.
I have a question for Mahnoosh.
Yes.
So your scoping review seems to be like you're not able to find some citations related to what you're looking for. But in clinical medicine, I doubt whether they record the climate grief, echo anxiety, and the third solastalgia as one of the diagnoses are one of the reasons for the depression or anxiety, which is a manifestation of these three things. So in that case, what is the plan to kind of, or do you have any plan to kind of include this as a reason for depression or anxiety, and to find out any literature on it, which can be kind of explored?
Yeah, of course. So far, the most literature that we have found is gray literature. So dissertations, like thesis, reports, and these are the most that we've found. We also have like a good amount of white literature, but it's not just as much as the gray literature. And we are actually thinking of, including that information as well. The gap that we have found, as mentioned, is that there aren't, like the literature that we've seen, like preliminary findings, is that one, the nature-based interventions that's been looked at is usually for people who are experiencing depression, anxiety, and stress. So these are most so like psychological disorders. And the other part is like, for instance, like people who are like experiencing like eco-anxiety or like climate-related distress are on the other part of, so most so with like therapies, so like psychological therapies, so for instance CBT or ACT, and we're looking to, like, the gap that we're looking at is nature-based interventions for people who are experiencing climate-related emotional distress. So whether it's all those like climate grief, eco-anxiety, or solastalgia. So that's like mainly what we're looking at, is to try to find the different, nature-based interventions for these specific, like climate-related emotional distress. And as far as what you've said, that's exactly like what we're trying to apply in the scoping review as well.
Great. Any other questions, thoughts for presenters? Rupsha, there was something that when you were presenting your lead-in, and you were talking about the impulse for us to turn to technology to sort of solve social challenges. I don't know if you had, it was just sort of a bullet point, like, oh, why do we do this? I was just wondering, do you have any thoughts on why we tend to turn in that direction? And I'm just wondering, I know that you try to work closely with policymakers. Do they tend to want to draw technology into the solution? Or
I will say we haven't worked with policymakers yet.
Okay.
That's not like a part of the research plan yet, but that would be great. But like just in the literature, there is a lot of critique of this sort of techno solutionist mindset, where oftentimes what happens is technologies, tools, products, what have you, are developed without the inclusion of people with lived experiences. And this is not just exclusive to people living with dementia. It could be people living with other disabilities, people in low to middle income countries. Often what happens is the technology is developed in a high income setting and then just deployed in a low to middle income setting. And things like, oh, what is the barrier to cost of that technology? A lot of the time people are like, oh, people in those countries just don't know how to use the technology. That's actually not the case. They do. The main barrier that I've found just in the literature that I've explored in this first year is actually the biggest barrier is cost of infrastructure. So cost of the actual devices and infrastructure like internet and electricity. And in terms of the service, so if you think about any sort of product you have, there is like a technical support line you can call. That typically for a lot of these technologies, that service is not in place. So oftentimes people are like, well, I have this like great gray box that's supposed to make my life easier, but I have no idea how to use it. In the example of the robot pets, they're deployed in long-term care settings, and long-term care staff aren't trained to how to maintain these robot pets. So they don't know how to like answer questions like why the pet isn't having food. Because, you know, like one of the great joys of having a pet is like you take care of it, you take it for a walk, you feed it. And people can't do that with a virtual pet. So there are all these questions and training gaps and not a systematic understanding of how the technology should be deployed.
Excellent. Well, it's great to have sort of design-focused research and people kind of correcting the record on some of that. So that's great. Excellent. So how about we're at about 11:50. We can do our, I think, 10-minute break if you're all ready for that. And then we can resume at noon with our next set of presenters. Sound like a plan? Excellent. Okay, everyone. So we'll break and we'll see you in 10 minutes. Okay, great. Welcome back, everyone. We had our 10-minute break, so we'll continue on with our last three presenters, 5 to 10 minutes per presentation. And then we'll, if everybody's happy, we'll follow the same format where we'll try to eke some time out towards the end to have a little bit more of a plenary discussion. Does that sound good? Excellent. Okay, so Naeema Hassan is a PhD candidate and is joining us online. Hi, Naeema. She is, of course, a candidate with the School of Global Health and a Dahdaleh Global Health Graduate Scholar. And I'm fortunate enough to have Naeema a member of my research group as well. So lovely to see you again. Her research is looking at equity and global health research partnership. And she's excited about the potential of this work to support more meaningful and inclusive collaboration across institutions. And as insider knowledge, I know she's particularly excited about this at this moment in time that we find ourselves, where there's a bit of a retraction in terms of global collaboration, ideas of global citizenship, et cetera. So it's really important work at an important time. So thank you, Naeema. I'm just going to hand over to you. Please start whenever you're ready.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Tara. So I'll just flip over to the next screen. Okay, so hi, everyone. It's really great to be with you all virtually. And unfortunately, sorry, I wasn't able to be there with you in person. But my name is Naeema, as Tara mentioned, and I'm a global health PhD student here at York. My research essentially explores institutional structures that govern global health partnerships between high income and low middle income countries. So we often hear about equity as guiding principles within the global health space. I'm sure many of you have heard it in the literature that you read and the projects that you work on. But the literature also shows that there's a lot of work to be done and that there's a disconnect between rhetoric and action. So this is a global health issue because institutions in the global north continue to set the terms for collaboration, whether that's funding, to research agenda, to authorship, which in hindsight often leads to sidelining global south institutions from being able to prioritize, like sidelining their priorities and agencies like within their own institutions. The problem here is in the lack of equity frameworks. I know many of us could, from the top of our heads, name a few. It's just that these frameworks are routinely undermined by structural imbalances in power, accountability, and decision making. Now, to understand this, my research will look at the institutional ecosystem, specifically looking at funders, journals and academic institutions, and how their policies, incentives, and practices shape their partnership dynamics that we know to date. And I just aim to understand not just what institutions are saying about equity, sort of like a current state, but how their internal governance either enables or limits meaningful change. All right, so why this research matters. Several Global South scholars have raised questions around like whether these equity principles truly reflect their lived experiences or institutional constraints. Some questions that come up on literature is, does this work? Like, is this a productive use of our time? Like, how will these help? Like, how will these guiding principles, toolkits, and frameworks like help us actually mobilize the implementation of equitable partnership, between global North and global South partners. And the literature also points to persistent structural barriers such as donor-imposed conditions, limited institutional autonomy, and constrained funding. These factors make it difficult to put equity guidelines into practice and essentially risks falling back into a one-sided model of partnership that could further perpetuate colonial legacies. Now, just to go back to the question on why this research matters, because the way research is funded, governed, and implemented can have consequential effect on health outcomes worldwide. This could also have effects on knowledge production and capacity strengthening globally. So when equity remains performative or symbolic, it impairs our ability to respond to local needs and global health emergencies in a just and equitable way. So the research approach and contributions. So this research will adopt a mixed methods approach. So we're looking at using a survey, semi-structured interviews are in plan as well to happen in the fall with stakeholders from both the global North and South. Looking to also conduct a group model building session, as well as explore design thinking methods such as co-design or just design thinking. And through this work, we hope to co-create resources like practical tools, guidelines, and policy recommendations that can support institutions in making equity commitments actionable. Now, I just would like to close off with a quote here. I was reading this book on systems change and system thinking for social change, and it's written by David Peter Stroh. And he quoted a medical essayist by the name of Lewis Thomas and said, if you want to fix something, you're first obliged to understand the whole system. And this stood out to me because as the global health landscape continues to shift, and we continue to, at times, like especially during these times, feel unmotivated, like disheartened amid like political or economic instability. Like I hope that this research aims to help us understand like the systems we operate within so that we can build more like a responsive and accountable, equitable partnerships that will be adaptable to the growing complexities of the times that we live in today. And just to conclude, I just would like to take this opportunity to acknowledge and thank Professor Tara Penny and Professor Carrie Scott for their continued support, mentorship, and guidance throughout this process. And truly, this all wouldn't be possible without, just their support. And to the Dahdaleh Institute, of course. And yeah, that will be all on my end. Thank you so much.
Great. Thank you, Naeema. Thank you so much for the excellent overview of your work. Really exciting. Great. So keeping to our plan, if you have any questions for Naeema, please mark them down. And we'll switch now. We've got our next presentation from, so our last but absolutely not least presenter, so Tove is a global health intern with the Dahdaleh Institute. Joining us from psychology as well, so a third-year psychology student hoping to enter biology in a little bit of hopeful transition, and she's in the honors Bachelor of Science program. And then I have here, of course, that Tove is passionate about the brain, sports, and languages. One day she hopes to be able to contribute her own ideas and findings to the field of health research. So thank you so much, Tove, for joining us. It's a pleasure to have you. Please start whenever you're ready.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Really appreciate it. So my presentation will be discussing my time as a special projects research assistant, which I know is not very self-explanatory, so we'll get into that. Thank you, Dr. Penny, for introducing me. I feel like you covered everything. I am, in the process of double majoring in bio, so Yeah. So my roles as a special projects research assistant, I've done a lot of content creation, and I've used things like Canva, Adobe Express, InDesign, and After Effects. So I worked on a variety of posters. Here are a couple of examples. And this has been really great because it allows me to kind of, support and, promote current global health events and things like that. I've also put together some short form videos using highlights from seminars throughout the year. And alongside creating these videos using things from the seminar series, I do also write the recaps for those. And highlight key points and takeaways. I also just generally provide administrative support for things, including the management of the website. So what I've learned, this has been, first of all, just a great opportunity. I've learned a lot. As a student in the Faculty of Health right now, I was aware of the Global Health Program at York, but I really wasn't too sure what exactly it was. But as I've attended seminars and just overall interacted with the research and, assisted, I've come to gain I would like to think a pretty good understanding of global health. And I really appreciate the interdisciplinary approach that it provides. And I'm definitely, very interested in it. It's something that I am, looking into for the future. It's, a new avenue for me. And as someone who hopes to enter the field of research, being able to see, behind the scenes how the Institute is run, all that, goes into making sure things run smoothly for everybody involved has been absolutely great. And it's way more than I had expected. So my ability to be able to create content for the Institute has also been probably just the biggest highlight of the position for me. I have been video editing for around 8 years, just in my free time as a hobby. So being able to create short form videos for the Institute has been really wonderful and allowed me to kind of take a new perspective on that, and, in kind of like a professional setting. So that's been really great. And alongside, being able to expand on my previous skills, I've been able to learn entirely new ones. I wasn't familiar with InDesign. I wasn't super familiar with WordPress. So being able to, work on managing the website, categorizing things, that's obviously a skill that's going to be very helpful, beyond. So that's been great. This internship, like I said, has just been a wonderful experience. And I would like to thank Natalie and Teresa for supporting me through this. They have been so wonderful and they do so much, so much. I also do just want to thank Serena Fung, who was another special projects research assistant. She was not able to present with me, but she also did a lot over the summer, and just want to thank her. And I'm looking forward to being able to continue my role through the fall winter semesters and continue being able to help out and promote global health. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Tove. Thank you. That's really helpful to get a sense of what it's like to learn research from that side. So yeah, that's excellent to hear. Okay, so I think we can open it up if we have any questions, comments from this group of presenters. Anyone like to share? Anyone online? Yes, please.
All right. Hello, everyone. Hello, Naeema. So my question is directed at you. I would just like you to please give more information on your thoughts for the group model building. You mentioned that that's part of what you're planning to do in your work. So I was just curious about that aspect in particular.
Thank you, Dr. Tunde. It's nice to see you. So essentially, because I'm exploring systems methods, I actually had the opportunity to attend a systems thinking summer school in France. And we were actually doing group model building sessions. And essentially, the goal of it was to really get to the specifics of understanding, unintended consequences and trying to look at the big picture, but also be able to further narrow it down to see and explore like what else is contributing, such as like barriers to the overall problem that you're exploring and researching. So it is very new to me. I just was very impressed with the activity that we were doing like at the summer school. And I hope to like learn more about it and be able to like use it in my research. And of course, I have Professor Tara Penny, who's our very own expert in systems, and have been bugging her about that as well. So yeah, I think that maybe captures it, but very early stages, and yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Great question. Any other questions?
We have one
Yeah,
for
please.
Kathirville.
Yeah.
I'm just curious about like I learned in a class last term that the US, I believe, either pulled funding from the WHO or they've kind of removed themselves from the WHO.
Can you repeat?
The WHO
Yeah.
and the US has they've taken away their funding or they've kind of
Yeah,
gone
US
away.
has been kind of withdrawn itself from the WHO and also the funding. Of course, WHO is managing with other sources, and other countries are kind of increasing their contributions. So, and also the WHO is prioritizing itself how to kind of efficiently manage the fund with the US cut.
Yeah. And also I do know that, and like the CDC, there are a lot of really important institutions in the US. I'm kind of focusing on one country. And with everything that's going on in the US right now and how that kind of ties into global health, what are your thoughts on how that might impact maybe like the outcomes with like AMR, like the action plan, or like how effectively we're addressing whatever goes on?
Yeah, so it has some indirect effect maybe, but of course, nothing is kind of currently stopping WHO, especially working on AMR, because as their plan, they worked on the political declaration with the UN General Assembly, and also followed by the interministerial conference in the Middle East, and then followed by now they are actually calling for a multi-sectoral consultation. Even I think GSL is involved in it, and they are calling for a multi-sectoral consultation to kind of work on the update on the next update with the global action plan. And in addition, as I know, something related to funding, one is of course Fleming Fund from UK has stopped their funding for the AMR, but REACT is working very actively, and GSL is primarily working on especially supporting countries through the Smart Choices project and other projects, in addition to the AMR policy accelerator course and other things. Of course, as one funding agency, our funding is getting cut, the other person is kind of pitching in and then supporting.
That's great to hear. Thank you.
And I think we had a consultation, I think, over here also in the DI very recently from the delegation from different institutes and also within DIAC, how the Canada, China, and other countries can kind of pitch in and then support WHO and other the INGOs in executing their works.
Thank you.
Great. Yeah.
I have a question for Tove.
Yeah.
What valuable experience that you've gotten so far from research projects that you think that you can apply to, like, for instance, another like research position?
I definitely think, first of all, like, this is my first experience being in an academic environment. So that just number one has been super great. I would say definitely the recap writing has been something that has been really beneficial, and a skill that I've been able to develop, more like I have done academic writing through some of my courses, but this has kind of allowed me to, think about how I'm presenting information and how it's going to be digestible for the readers. So I would say that that's definitely one of the main aspects, but also, as you get into academia, you make poster presentations. So I think definitely the content creation will help me out there. So yeah.
Can I ask like a very technical question?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
How was your experience using Adobe Express?
I will say that's the one I've probably used the least, but it's been pretty good. I find it very similar to Canva overall.
Okay.
And I feel like once you've used one Adobe software, you kind of like get the swing of like all of them. So I found it pretty straightforward. So yeah.
Thanks.
Other thoughts, even questions we might have had for our first three presenters? Does anybody have any follow-up? Anyone? I might have a quick follow-up, Mahnoosh, around, I was really interested, you were talking about, similarly, there was sort of a bullet point on your lead-in around like ecological grief, and you made a point to, I think, get the key message across that these are real things and they're real emotions and they're valid and people have them and we don't recognize them. I don't know if anything, either your own perspective or anything you've come across that helps us understand why we're so hesitant to accept different types of, if it's not a grief about the loss of another human, it could be about animals or the environment or something that we're sort of hesitant to acknowledge that that's a real source of grief. I don't know if you had any thoughts about why that is, like why.
Of course, I think there's like different perspectives to that, but my own perspective is that the world that we live in right now is so busy. Like we're so engaged with, finding the next job, like finding the next internship or finding volunteer opportunities, or some people are making ends meet. So like, for instance, low income families. And I can't speak for rich people, but like for like low income and middle income families, like they try to like make like the ends meet and try to, they're very busy. And for me, like I'm also like very busy as well. I think we all can like agree to that. We're all very busy into our daily lives and into this like capital society. Mm-hmm. And we don't really see that because we're not really connected to nature in some way. We don't really think about nature around us. Like I think the more that we spend time in nature, the more we really feel and recognize that, disconnection and that hesitance that we have towards recognizing like the eco-anxiety that we feel. I think that we all feel some type of eco-anxiety, also nostalgia, or climate grief, but sometimes we don't really recognize that because we're so tied into our lives. And the only way that I think that we could actually recognize that is spending time in nature. And whether that's like walking or doing like art activities, just like seeing how animals interact, seeing, for instance, like if there's like forest fires going on, like not really turning our eyes and be like, okay, that's not our problem. We're humans. Like that's not affecting us. It affects us very greatly. Like us, animals, insects, nature, we're all so connected. We're not really separate from nature. We're very interconnected, as I say. So recognizing and really spending time in nature really helps us see the bigger picture. Yeah, I hope that helps.
Oh, it's great description. And it's just something that resonates is, currently, right, where the news about the wildfires is everywhere and everyone feels some level of grief, to be sure. But it seems like our grief only counts when homes are lost or the air quality is declined, and that causes health issues for people. And we forget, like you mentioned, the interconnections between other animals, or just the fire and the destruction that happens full stop. So until your presentation, I hadn't really thought of, all of that actually being part of the thought process. Like, yeah.
I think that like also like the Wellness Impact Lab has climate cafes where people really talk about, the climate grief that they experience or the eco-anxiety that they experience. And really, I think climate cafes are really one way that we could recognize and really talk about them and acknowledge what's going on with, our home, which is nature.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Great point. And I think, is there a
Harvey has a question?
Harvey? Yeah, Harvey, please go ahead.
Well, first of all, congratulations to everybody. I really enjoyed all the presentations and the diversity. And seeing so many of you doing different versions of knowledge synthesis, it's a real kind of expertise that we're growing at the Dahdaleh. My question, I thought this was a great opportunity for students and for us sort of to come together and building community. But it's a big institute, so I'm just wondering some other ideas you may have of how we could bring together, the students and along with the fellows faculty at the DI. I mean, we have events like this, but do you have some other sort of ideas to really, reach out and engage? Because we have so many wonderful things happening, and it's a challenge for me to try, to keep up on all the amazing things underway. So what are your thoughts of some additional things that might help to build our community?
Yeah, thanks, Harvey. That's a great question. It's one that actually we're trying to do some longer term engagement work to help answer. Community building in, as you mentioned, present day when folks are really busy, where they struggle with the commitments already on their table is a real challenge. So trying to find accessible, meaningful ways to bring people together is not a really easy task. But I think some of the answers actually lie with folks around the table, the Dahdaleh Institute membership, the folks that are doing different pieces of work, and then us trying to find out how can we best facilitate meaningful connections amongst the people who are sort of able and in any given moment ready to sort of engage. So one is certainly having these kinds of days and events where we get to learn a bit more detail about each. I have fellow faculty who I work with routinely, and I really don't know what they actually do. And so we've even been talking about at the annual general meeting to have an extra period of time rather than it just being 2 hours, to have it stretch over 2 days, 2 half days, so people can attend one day or the other day or both. And again, give an opportunity and a floor for people to present some of the work they're doing. So kind of starting small, I think, giving an opportunity to 5-10 minutes to present work, a little bit of an open discussion like the one here, that who knows what wheels might turn or what connections you might make. But Harvey, I think if you're thinking in terms of a strategy, it's trying to keep in touch. It's trying to give opportunities for a venue for discussion, and then trying to reach out to people and see what might work for the membership at different times of the year, around different kinds of topics. Do we have topics like a topical day where people come in? Do we have just sort of a general meet and greet type opportunities? And really looking to folks like yourself and the membership who have great, innovative, creative ideas, and then trying to reach out to Charlotte and Natalie and Teresa, who are amazing at making these things happen. Okay, was there any other just last thoughts to share? Okay. Well, I wanted to thank everyone. Thank you, firstly, of course, for attending and investing your time and effort in the work that you've done. It was a real pleasure to see what the range that's happening and the depth of the work and the quality of the work and the important topic areas. So just thank you, a sincere thank you for taking the time. And then secondly, for coming to engage, asking great questions of your fellow members, and starting hopefully a dialogue that, who knows, could lead to some other connections, which is great. And a heartfelt thank you to Teresa and to Natalie and Charlotte and the staff at the Dahdaleh Institute, without which nothing like this or even close to this would ever happen. So thank you so much. We appreciate your time and organization and professionalism. It's so appreciated. And I think there's nothing else major for me to close. I want to have an open invitation if anybody has any questions or follow-up ideas from our secondary discussion about what other events we can have to build some community engagement among membership. My door is always open, my email inbox completely accessible. So please feel free anytime to follow up with ideas or thoughts that you might have. I very much welcome your input, and we'll be working on this kind of thing for probably the foreseeable future, but intensely over the next 6 to 12 months. So very welcome any input. And that goes for everyone online as well. Harvey, thank you so much for your thoughts. And if you have any others, please feel free to send them. I would welcome them. Okay. And we are on time as well. So a special thanks to everyone that helped keep us there. I know these things sometimes can go off the rails a little bit in terms of time. So we do not want to delay the food. That would always be a big no-no. So we've made it in time for food, which is great. Okay, so thank you, everyone, and have a great rest of your summer. And we'll see you on campus for most of you in September.